Don't ever tell me there's nothing to do in St. Louis. Our next guest proves that point. Every time you drive to the lake, you pass a town called Fulton, Missouri. And every time I drive by there and I see the sign for the Churchill Museum, I think to myself, in this town produced one of the most important speeches of the 20th century. The executive director of the National Churchill Museum in Fulton, Missouri is here in studio, Dr. Robert Havers. Doctor, thanks for joining us here on KTRS.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You've been there how long as the executive director?
Around about 9 years.
9 years you're living in Fulton, Missouri, and you still haven't lost your British accent?
It rather comes with a job, and I've done my best to preserve it because of that very fact.
Okay, good. The Churchill Museum in Fulton, Missouri is what? What is that? It's the World Churchill Museum?
It is America's National Churchill Museum, recognized by Congress in 2009 to be just that. But there's been a Churchill Museum on the campus of Westminster College since the 60s. Churchill, as I'm sure you and your listeners know, came to Westminster in 46, delivered his Iron Curtain address, thereby marked really the beginning of the Cold War. Westminster College commemorated that fact in the 60s by bringing a church from London, reconstructing it stone by stone, brick by brick, and under that church, an original Wren church, is the Churchill Museum. And we took it apart, put it back together again in 2006, and really brought Churchill and history to life. And that's what was recognized as America's National Churchill Museum.
It's such an extraordinary speech. We'll get to the speech in a second and what the new exhibit is there. But why was it there? What was it? He could have gone anywhere in the world to give this speech. Why did he go to Fulton, Missouri to give this speech?
Well, you're right. He could have gone anywhere in the world, and he comes to Westminster. First of all, Churchill loses the election after World War II.
Now, hold on. He loses, and he doesn't see the end of World War II as prime minister, right?
He loses the election in July, and the war goes on against Japan until September.
Okay.
So he sees the end of the German war.
Okay.
Loses the election, considered a great man for war, not a great leader for peace, as the British electorate thought. Still, however, has a message to deliver. The message he wants to deliver is one about the Soviet Union. On the bottom of Westminster College is a handwritten postscript from Harry Truman, Missouri's own president, saying, "This is a wonderful school in my home state. Please say you'll do it. I deliver the lecture. I'll introduce you. Best regards, Harry Truman." Churchill knows if he comes to Westminster on that day in March, delivers that message he wants the world to hear, the world will be watching because Harry Truman, incumbent president, will introduce him. So that's what brings him to, of all places, Westminster College, Fulton, Missouri.
So it was Harry Truman who added the heft that would get the world to watch.
Absolutely, that little clincher.
Did Harry Truman know about the speech beforehand?
Well, there's a lot of debate about this, but undoubtedly he did. And certainly in the U.S. State Department and in the British government at the highest levels, everyone is suspicious of Stalin, suspicious of his intentions, but the wider public are not aware of that. It's still the great Russian ally from World War II. So
right.
What Churchill does is deliver a message safe in the knowledge that the governments of both countries, Britain and the US, know what he's going to say. But for Truman and for Attlee, the British Prime Minister, plausible deniability, see what the public think of this message they know is coming.
And how was the message received? I mean, was it front page news the next day?
It's very interesting. We have a copy of the Fulton Sun of the very next day, and the actual message of the speech isn't really top story. It goes around the world, though. It flashes around the world. The Russians denounce it. This is Churchill, the warmonger, prompting another war, and that's one of the reasons why he isn't re-elected in Britain. But eventually, Churchill's warning, his clarion call, is shown to be very accurate.
So once the curtain starts to fall, if you will, then people start to go back and realize that Churchill called it.
Exactly right. The division of Germany that Churchill predicts in the Iron Curtain speech doesn't happen until 49, 3 years later. So Churchill, once again, is quite prescient in what he's saying.
Where does the phrase Iron Curtain come from? Did he make that up? How was that derived?
No, he didn't. Churchill is well known for his wonderful witticisms and quotations, some of which he actually said. He uses them very adeptly, and he certainly plagiarizes the use of Iron Curtain. It had been used, curiously, by Joseph Goebbels in the last days of World War II to warn about what he thought the Soviet Union would do. It had been used after World War I, and it actually dates back to the 19th century, to the world of the theater, when an iron curtain would drop on the stage to prevent spread of fire. It was a fire prevention method, basically.
So Goebbels used it. So he sort of stole it from a Nazi.
He did, yes. Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this museum is open to the public.
It is open to the public 362 days a year. We're only closed Christmas, Thanksgiving, and New Year's Day, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Churchill died penniless. Did he die broke?
He didn't die broke. Churchill really struggles with money his whole life, and one of the reasons why he's such a prolific author, and he wins the Nobel Prize for Literature, is that he is always subsidizing his income through journalism. He spends a lot of time in the 30s writing articles and a lot of books in his retirement, so he doesn't die broke at all. But Churchill famously said that he's easily satisfied with the best, and his spending would attest to that, I think.
Was he a stutterer? Did he stutter?
He did a little bit in his early life, and he worked very hard to overcome speech,
right,
and worked very hard on his spoken addresses.
Dr. Robert Havers is our guest. He's the executive director of the National Churchill Museum in Fulton, Missouri, at Westminster College. And you do not get enough attention, which is why we wanted you on here anyway. But when we found out about this new Reagan-Thatcher exhibit, we wanted you on to talk about that. So what's this new exhibit?
We have a special exhibition that celebrates the relationship between Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, two great Cold War warriors, two great presidents and prime ministers from the 1980s, both comparatively recently deceased. Both curiously spoke at Westminster College. Reagan in 1990 to dedicate the 8 sections of the Berlin Wall we have there, and Margaret Thatcher came in 1996 to commemorate what was then the 50th anniversary of Winston Churchill's Iron Curtain speech.
So you have 9 sections of the Berlin Wall there?
We have 8 sections, 8 contiguous sections, which makes it the largest number of contiguous sections in North America.
So, wow. There was a special bond between Reagan and Thatcher, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. A curious commonality of backgrounds, both from quite humble origins, both rose to the top of the greasy pole, if you like, of politics in their respective countries. Both came to power with a distinct agenda to change the direction in which their respective nations were headed. Both did that remarkably successfully, though both did so not without controversy. So it's a wonderful commonality of intentions, and we have a wonderful special exhibition, materials borrowed from the Reagan Presidential Library, from Eureka College in Illinois, where Reagan went to school. So a wonderful special exhibition.
But it's also, it's yes, they had a friendship. Yes, they were in power at the same time, but they both came from or ended up with very conservative philosophies. And so one ran Britain and the other one ran the U.S., both from this more or less the same political wing. And so at the same time. So, I mean, that was a moment in time, was it not?
Thatcher often, though, in the United Kingdom is considered a great English radical, if you like, for the way in which she shook up society from top to bottom and really tried to reorder things in a very different fashion. So there's a radicalism inherent in her conservatism as well.
Yeah. And were they good friends besides being from the same political party and from the same political wing?
They actually had a deep mutual respect. The exhibition, the special exhibition we've got, is based on a book written by a scholar who was at Westminster College last year, James Cooper, that talks about that special relationship. And he details the fact that there is a lot of commonality in political ideas, a lot of agreement on policy, a lot of disagreement too, but what he brings out, and what I think our exhibition brings out, is that deep personal respect one for the other.
All right, so the exhibit is there now?
It's there now till March 9th.
Through March 9th,
Yes.
And then everything goes back to where it should go.
And we have yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so how do we get tickets? How do we find out where to go? What's all that information?
All available on our website, nationalchurchmuseum.org. And we also actually have a very special weekend coming up, our Churchill weekend on the 1st and 2nd of March with our Kemper lecture. And we also have 2 members of the Churchill family, Randolph and Jenny, coming for their first ever visit to the National Churchill Museum.
Oh, okay. And we can go online and find out more about that.
Information all online as well.
Then that website again?
It's www.nationalchurchillmuseum.org. churchill.org.
Executive Director of the National Churchill Museum, Dr. Robert Havers. It just pains me every time I drive down to the lake and I'm with somebody in the car and I'm like, you know what famous thing happened here? And no, what? I mean, it's just.
Well, McGraw, we hear that a lot. Everyone's just got to try and make the time and come in. You'll always welcome. You let me know when you want to come down. I'll give you the special director's tour.
It's history right there, and it's what, an hour away, 45 minutes away.
It's about a little over an hour,
Yeah.
and it's the Cold War in many ways could be said to start in Missouri on the campus of Westminster College.